I'm here again with Karl Fisher at Alabaster Coffee Roaster and Tea Company. And this time I wanted to talk to him a little bit about, well, COVID, the elephant that's been in the room for over a year now, and how Alabaster responded to that. Karl, we had conversations early on, because the other part we didn't disclose in the previous interview is you are our board president as well as other things. And thank you for being on our board. And you've gone through the program when it was called Scale Up, and now you've gone through our COVID recovery program that we had put in place. What were your thoughts? How did you respond initially, and then how did you adjust as COVID rolled out a little more than a year ago now?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like forever ago.
I mean, we're still sitting in an empty coffee shop that you're still selling coffee from.
Right. Yeah, we're still here. We're still here, and we're so happy. This was not, certainly not anything that we had planned on. It was a lot of goal adjustments, certainly, that we had to do. When I think kind of COVID overall, as we saw what was beginning to happen, right, as different places in the country were starting to close and starting to take different efforts, to mitigate. That was hard, because that was we had to come up with kind of contingency plans that were just nowhere on the radar ever before, right? And even when it came around at first, it was. We also had 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Yeah.
It's
we did that, right? And
right.
We're back open like we were before.
Well, like two weeks until Easter, but a year later. Yeah. So as we looked at it, I said, all right. So what does this mean for our staff and our business, and then what does this also mean for kind of the community around us? Because we have our folks that we're taking care of internally, but then we do also recognize that we are in the service industry, so we serve the community, and we are recognized as community leaders, and we do remember that, and that's important, to me. So we looked and said, all right, places are starting to close. We don't know what's ahead. And so we looked and we committed to, so I reached out, I talked with some other restaurants around town, that were kind of the closest thing to us, and said, all right, what are you guys thinking? Just kind of what's going on? I'm very, glad and lucky that I've got such a good relationship with so many of the other, not just small businesses in Williamsport, but also those kind of within food service. Mm-hmm. There's always an open door, to come in and just ask questions. So do that also if you're in a position to be able to do that. And we looked and said, all right, there could be a chance that this might be an extended thing. And we don't know what hours might be like, or even if we're open, what sales might be like. So we looked at kind of unemployment options and said, all right, this might be something that we need to do. And so we closed. We took a couple days and decided that we were going to close for a period of time, and. We committed to our staff to pay them through that that scheduled expected time that they were expected to be paid, and then we had kind of our final closing staff meeting that March, and we walked through with each of our staff how to apply for unemployment. Not something that I enjoyed doing or ever thought that I would have to do. Probably the low point of my professional career. Mm. But I looked at that as, look, unemployment is a tool. It's a tool, and it's a benefit, and I really believe that could potentially be the right tool to serve in that time. And I wanted my folks to be kind of as taken care of as we were able to do. So we put that together for them. And then as we went through, after a couple weeks, we decided to try to reopen. It was a little bit at a time. I looked at that first kind of closing. That was a big step back, or a halt. And honestly, from that point, I said, whatever decisions that we're going to make going forward, we're not going to backtrack again. Like we will not. We've laid off almost our entire staff. Like, I will never do that again. And so, you know me, I can take a while to make decisions. But I want that decision to stick, right? And so, we've been.
So you didn't want to yo-yo your employees. Hey, come back for a week. Hey, we got to let you go again. Hey, come back for a week.
No. I mean, who wants that? Nobody wants that, And I think, emotionally, I saw us going into a time of there were so many questions, and no one knew what to expect or what consistency was going to look like. And I thought, if I can at least give some consistency and expectation for my staff, like that's a big deal. So we started to open, a little by little. The one thing we kept going was our online sales and our web store, because everybody was home, so we could still kind of have commerce going that way. But our retail closed pretty immediately. The majority of our wholesale also closed. About 40% of our gross income is through wholesale. So it's quite a bit. So we kept that going. We moved. The effort that we were putting in really did shift to online. We had an existing web store. But it was just always kind of there. We really hadn't pushed it kind of into its own location as an idea to really invest in it yet.
And that website would be?
Alabastercoffee.com.
Okay, alabastercoffee.com. Check in the section below and we'll have a link right there for you if you're interested. I highly recommend you do it. Anyway, so you moved there.
Yeah, so we moved there. Retail was very slow to start. I believe we started with 2 days a week for a couple hours, and we started with curbside pickup. A lot of folks in our downtown were doing order ahead and curbside, which is something that we had never done before, and frankly, I had zero interest in really ever doing. It just, it didn't really fit in within our paradigm of what we wanted our business to be, but that's what we needed to do. So we did that. We did delivery. Kind of just trying these things. I will say, if COVID brought any positive to us, it was changing the paradigm and really kind of forcing us, and maybe forcing me, to try things quicker than I normally would have. But it was very much out of a kind of a survival piece too, and that feeling. And then we moved from, we'd open up more days for curbside as that continued to grow, and as we saw people out a little bit more. Then we opened up, we have some corner windows in our shop that go right out onto the sidewalk. We built a service area up there so that we could effectively have kind of walk-up window.
And thankfully you could do that really pretty much through the summer and into the fall, gorgeous
Correct.
Weather anyway.
Yep. Yeah, it was great. We really lucked out that it was a great, weather was a great season last year. Lots of outdoor seating popped up and kind of community seating, and that was really good, because a lot of us weren't really sure. We couldn't really have seating, and honestly, we didn't really know if we wanted folks inside or not. So to be able to structure service in a way that, again, we would not say it was ideal, but it worked, and we got to a point where it worked really well.
Now, I mentioned that you had gone through our COVID recovery cohort, and we won't go into too many details, but at times the conversation would get heated. And what I thought was interesting about that as I reflect on it is that it really mirrored the conversation and the tenor of debate across the country.
Correct.
And needless to say, a lot of that discussion centered around these. And just so those of you that are wondering and about to comment in the comment section, why aren't they wearing masks? You know, COVID's still a thing. His is next to him, mine is here. We had it on before we started. When we bump elbows when we're done, we're gonna put them back on again. And here's why we do this. We can have all sorts of reasons why, but in a sense, I do it out of respect for the business that I'm working with, and I do it out of respect for those around me. I jokingly say I wear my mask to shut you up and you wear yours to make you happy. Who cares why I wear my mask? I'm wearing my mask, and that's kind of my point. And as we went through that, it seemed like this was not the Air Force, but the mask was kind of the tool we all use to argue with each other, but I think there was something a little bit deeper about understanding our willingness to accept risks personally and risks in certain areas. And as we talk about risks, like I might be more willing to take certain risks, business risks or something else, but I am never going on a roller coaster. Never. And I don't care how safe you tell me it is, I'm falling out when I go upside down. I just know that's going to happen, right? And so we all have different levels of risk in different things. And I appreciate the way you went through that and had that conversation. Now, there were other businesses that evaluated risk differently. And one of the things we talked about, I think, in that session was that for some businesses, they know their customers. One restaurant caters to motorcyclists. They're not going to wear masks because they're not wearing helmets. Right? And she goes, we're fine. We can open up tomorrow. Everybody will come in. Everybody will be happy. We don't have to require masks. And like when you know your customer base and you're part of that base, it makes sense to respond that way. You're here on the corner. You really had to cater to all of us. So
yeah.
How do you approach that?
It was difficult at times. You know, I certainly think some of it does come out of, again, we've been here for 10 years. We have built a positive rapport with a lot of people, which I do think makes a difference. A lot of it was, look, we're a private business, right? And yes, and I say we're here to serve the community, which we are. But we do also have expectations. Even pre-COVID, I have expectations of what is and is not acceptable behavior inside my business. Thankfully, I have never had to remove many people. But that
I'm proud to say I'm not one of the ones you've had to remove so far.
Yeah,
I've behaved so far.
But you know, but there are expectations, and that's fine. And you know, and if I speak as a customer, if I go into a business, if I go into anywhere, and there are expectations there, I have the ability to choose whether to patronize that business or not. You know, and so we had expectations, and we enforce those as best we can. You know, we had a lot of conversation about customer service, you know, and what that looks like. But even still, you know, so today, as of April 8th, earlier this week, I mean, we could have had indoor seating in here for quite a number of weeks so far. I could have had seating at the bar starting this past Monday. As a business, I'm choosing not to, primarily out of the safety of my staff and what I believe to be the safety of the community at this point. My kind of two markers now for bringing indoor seating back has been upgrades to our HVAC system. So for some air quality and air purification, which just, you know, the level that I want now did not exist before. So that's happened.
Interesting.
And I also wanted all of my staff who desired it to be vaccinated before we had indoor seating. Being in food service, you know, when you sit down, masks are off, you know, whatever. But again, like my my primary responsibility here as the owner and as the staff lead is for my staff, and I believe that caring for them, and we talked about financially caring for them, I believe it's also in their physical health. And so while we've decided not to make vaccinations a requirement for employment, we are at a place where I said we're not going to entertain indoor seating until anyone on staff who desires to be vaccinated can do so. So it's just some of those things, and my belief is that the community will be okay with it. We've and again, I believe that we have shown up enough and kind of proven ourselves enough that even if someone does not agree with my decision, first, that's fine. They don't have to. But that is my decision to make, and that's my responsibility, and I believe it to be in our best interest. So that's what we're going to do.
Well, I like what you're saying. You set the expectations for your business and how your business would interact with customers, and you set expectations for the customers would interact with your business, and you made those very clear. I think there were signs out front. Masks must be worn when you approach and when you pick up your orders, and this was when you're doing the outside service, right. and those signs were very clear. I think that's probably key when you're managing anything like this, whether you're managing it during a crisis like COVID, or you're just managing your business. Set the expectations for your staff, set the expectations for your customers of the behavior you expect inside your place. And we've seen signs show up that say no shirt, no shoes, no masks, no service.
Right.
That's just playing off an already established expectation that you have to wear shoes and shirts, and the unspoken expectation that you have pants on,
right,
or some sort of lower covering, right? So I think that's a really good point that you're bringing up, that if you set those expectations, people may not like your expectations, they can turn and walk away. You'll have that rare one that will argue with you that you just tell them it's time to leave. So I appreciate that you've done those steps and set those expectations. And I talk about how the conversation went in our cohort. It was just really kind of interesting because we had strong anti-maskers and strong maskers, and that's a conversation you expect to have when we have conversations like this. And it's not going to go away because COVID goes away. There are going to be other things that will cause that to come up. And how do you handle those? You handle it, like you said, by setting expectations. So one last question about COVID. I kind of do want to go back to the wholesale side. So you lost some large wholesale contracts, at least temporarily. Two parts. The first part is, where did you see the growth then immediately? And secondly, have any of those come back?
Yeah. So our, like I said, if I look at our business, our profit areas, and those three sections of retail, wholesale, and online, we kind of keep as a KPA, right? You like hearing that? Is retail and wholesale effectively shut down? Online was an enormous jump. So we actually increased our hours for our production staff, during that time. But I mean, so we saw that growth. Our web sales, were up about 550% online for 2020. It made a difference, and I say that was very much what carried us through, because of the various grant and loan programs that have now been around over the past year. We did not begin seeing any grant or loan money that was kind of COVID specific until much later in 2020. I really do credit the shift in customer purchasing and kind of us leaning into our web store, as that's what helped us weather really those first few months. If that structure did not exist, I really would have some doubts on how we would have done.
And then the ones that came back. I mean, we're going to talk in another video series, I hope someday. Hopefully you'll invite us back to talk about your relationship with Lycoming College and the Warrior Coffee program. And so they're one of your key college accounts. and the restaurants in town, are they back? Are they at 100% where they were before? Are they coming back? What's it look like for your future on there?
I don't know that most anyone is 100% back yet. Because what we offer, if I talk about our wholesale customers, kind of as our wholesale portfolio, right? It is pretty diverse in that there are a few colleges that we roast for. There are coffee shops, but there are also a lot of restaurants. We have a large number of churches that we roast for. So it really is kind of spread out for what folks' needs are. But as we're seeing a bigger reopening, and I'm really glad to say nearly 100% of our wholesale customers, partners are still open and did not have to permanently close.
That's great news. That's great news. One last question, and we'll wrap up the COVID section and discussion today. You mentioned your employees and caring for your employees and being intentional in how you step down and intentional in bringing them back. Mm-hmm. I don't think that was the word you used this time, but it's one you use a lot. Yeah. How have they responded when you've asked them to come back, and what have you been able to do as you bring them back? Are they coming back when you ask?
For the most part, yes.
Names? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'd say the only really the only I think kind of hiccup perhaps that we've looked at is if we've had staff that have perhaps relocated out of the area. So those might just present their own scheduling difficulties that would happen any time that a change in residence would happen. But in terms of interest and willingness, that has been there. And even just being in contact with our staff, especially those first months, and there were other things that we did that I think were helpful. And we were mailing staff coffee, and we had a virtual tip jar, and folks were sending in money for that was going right to staff, and we just did different sales for things that would just dump money back to staff. But there was a very constant hey, when there's time, I want to come back. I want to come back. And
what I like about this is you had a conversation with me early on that whoever was on unemployment was collecting $600 a week from the federal edition and plus up, and that you and other restaurateurs and service industry owners around the area were having that conversation like you talked about, going out and talking to them about what's fair and respectful to the employee when you bring them back to something where maybe you pay $2, $3 an hour plus tips, and they're making a whole lot more just sitting at home, and how you work that. And it's an intangible that I think you've put on the table, that when you care for the people the way you've talked about caring for your employees, they're willing to come back because they see the value in you, they see the value in Alabaster, and they see the value you provided to them and the willingness to be part of that.
Yeah, we very literally sat down, with my manager here, and like I said, with other business owners, and looked at how we were projecting sales and what kind of unemployment was paying out and what we expected for needed shift hours, and we were very calculated through that of, all right, at what point, frankly, is it are our staff not being penalized effectively for coming back to work? There's that. It was a weird spot. It was a weird spot to be in, but really looking at it, and I remember our staff, there are people. We're going to take care of them, and making sure that we're doing our homework as leaders to do that well.
Yeah, and to wrap this up, I want to thank you for everything you've done and being a voice for understanding how to assess risk as we went through the types of things we did with COVID, and caring for your employees, and as you say, being a leader in the community and setting that expectation. Again, if you have any questions about maybe how Karl addressed the COVID issue, feel free to leave that in the comment section below or reach out to us. We will have a link to his website if you want to order coffee or maybe get a carafe, get one of those Chemex things. Can they order Chemex from you as well? So, take a look and see what he has available there. Be sure if you get a chance, click on subscribe and click on the bell. I think it's important that you see the rest of these series. These are important things in my mind that these businesses like Karl, business owners, have to say about businesses that you as a business owner can take and learn as well. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you on our next video.